so do my parents. So I'm kind of New York inside, though I've lived in lots of other places. I started painting when I was 15, and I'm 65, so I'm not gonna do that math, but I think it's 50 years I've been painting, so it's a long time. When I was deciding what to show, I thought about, changed my mind a bunch of times, but I decided I would show paintings that I had done from the top of the World Trade Center, because I have this emotional connection to the place for many reasons. And so all of these are done over a period of time, long period of time. I started painting there in 1985, and I continued right up until about a couple of years ago, different locations. So first slide. Oh, I hope it's not as light as it looks here, but the first painting I did up there was of Hoboken, and I tended to paint when I was at the top of the World Trade Center. I focused a lot on New Jersey because I wasn't really that interested in the sort of picture postcard view. But I got back to New York from Italy, where I'd been living, and I realized I'd had a view of the World Trade Center since I was 10 years old out of my bedroom window, but I'd never been up there. So I got on my bike, because I think I was, in my 20s, I could do that, with a full-size French easel on my back, 18 by 24-inch canvas, and I rode my bike down the West Side Highway to go paint up at the observation deck, which was inside. And that started this whole process, because I just fell in love with looking at these distant views where you have like this aerial, things become more abstract. And I would go back every day and on my bike with a big painting, and I worked on this painting for quite a long time. Next. I talked because I didn't want to keep paying my $11, I went and talked to the Port Authority president, and I talked him into, because it was a jointly owned, the World Trade Center, by New Jersey and New York, so everything was very bureaucratic. And I talked him into giving me a free pass to go up and paint, which I remember arguing with him a lot. And at one point he said to me, "You're just like my daughter. You think you can have everything you want." And I was like, yeah. So he gave me this free pass, which I actually used right up until the trade centers came down, changed it over time. So this was one of the first paintings I did when I went back after a period of time. It was maybe 10 years after the first one, but I painted the same view, and I would carry all my stuff on the subway now with my easel, all my crap, 2 big paintings, because I'd work on one in the morning, one in the afternoon. My process was kind of work on the same painting for maybe a month, and they were usually in the scale of like 16 by 16 square, or a long painting like this was maybe 14 by 20. And I did that even when I had, a studio through the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. I had a residency there, but I realized I preferred painting with the tourists to being surrounded by 19 artists in an open 40,000 square foot paint studio. So I ended up dragging my stuff every day up to the observation deck. By that time, I knew all the people who worked there, the guy who washed the windows, which that's a scary job to have, and the people who clean the bathrooms, the woman who at the concession stand used to give me free coffee. So, and next, I did this painting from behind the little game thing they had set up. And my daughter, when she didn't have school or had a holiday, she would come with me I would drag her with me, and she'd bring a book. So it was sort of like, this was one of my home away from homes. And that first painting that I showed actually was bought by Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital, and not that I need to tell you, for their sleep lab. And I was like, boy, that's a really, is that a compliment? I'm not. But I'm kind of a frenetic person, anyone who knows. Most people who know me would say, and somehow my paintings are, that's like the way I almost meditate, because the paintings tend to be very quiet and contemplative, and I'm like so not like that. So if I don't paint for a while, it's really not a healthy thing for me. So I kind of am a little obsessive about painting. And this is Ellis Island and Governor's Island and Verrazano. Next. Yeah, that last painting is actually in the Staten Island. No, the last painting is in the Museum of the City of New York, and this painting is at the Brooklyn Museum. But I am sure it has never been on the wall of the museum, although the other one actually has been. So I moved from New Jersey and started painting Brooklyn from up in the World Trade Center. Next. And after the towers came down, I happened to have been in Italy right before that, and I came back the day before. So I wasn't up there, because I probably would have been, because not that I painted there all the time, but it was kind of at that moment I was going there a lot. And so, I kind of watched the whole thing, because I had gotten back to Brooklyn. I could see everything from my house, and just obviously such a devastating thing. I didn't go over to the site for a number of years. I was walking down the street a couple of years afterwards, and the woman who cleaned the bathrooms recognized me. And we didn't know each other's names. It was just like, she hugged me, and we both just were bawling on the middle of the street. And we never even asked each other our names, but she told me that the window washer was actually out washing windows, which just, and the woman who gave me free coffee ran back into the building, which I just was like, she was so worried that she would lose her job, that she felt like, and they had said, they spoke about how you had to go back to work, because it wasn't the South building, it was, it wasn't the North building, it was the South building. So after that, I happened to speak, and a long story, but I happened to talk to the president of Silverstein Properties, who was redeveloping the World Trade Center site after that, and you can go to the next one. I asked him if there might be a place for me to paint in the first building that went up, which was number 7. And so he arranged for me to paint there for 3 weeks, which turned into 3 years, and then 9 years. Just kept moving me, and they're stuck with me for life. They basically accept that fact. So he gave me a whole space. It was 50,000 square feet to myself. And so I was working there. I know, I used to bring people to look at it, and they would be like, what? But it was raw space. It wasn't, but it was still, I had like 12 bathroom stalls I'd go to. And so I finally had a place where I didn't have to drag all my stuff on the subway. I could leave my stuff there. And so I did a series of large paintings documenting the development of the memorial site. Silverstein Properties was so generous. Eventually, every time they'd rent out a floor, because the top floors were not rented out first, it was always the lower ones because they were more expensive. He would just move me up, so I was in 35, 57, 65, and then they finally rented out Building 7. They moved me to Building 4, and then to Building 3. Sometimes I'd have other people. They put there were like 5 artists that they ended up working together. So this was the first, I did a series, and a lot of times I'll work in series using the same subject. Next. And I kind of just did a series of large paintings of sort of documenting the development of the site, but also because I liked the way it became more abstract as you looked down. And when you looked up, it was almost more detailed in the distance, which is the opposite of that, the way atmospheric perspective works.
When you say large,
this is, for me large, because I do a lot of small work. This is 42 vertical, 30 across. Actually, the next picture is of me working on it, so you can see, and just to give a process idea, these pictures were taken by the Brazilian a Brazilian photographer, and he took these fantastic pictures. But people were always coming in and out, vets and people who just, they would bring them through the studio. That was like the one thing we occasionally had to do. Next. Yep, so that was a couple years ago, and basically Silverstein Properties has said I can come anytime. But it was, so I just have this emotional connection to that place, but also I just always loved painting aerial views, so I'm in Wyoming, and there are a couple of paintings that I've done so far that are in the back. Any questions?
Your applause first.
I have a question.
Yes, okay.
So, first of all, actually they're all great, but the one, I love the one with the two bridges in New York. It was like one of the most
Brooklyn?
evocative paintings I've seen of that part of, it's sort of, it's not realistic, anyway. I'm just curious, since you're an urban painter, how being at Jentel and doing landscape painting and how those things relate in terms of your practice.
Yeah. Well, I'm showing the mostly urban paintings, but I've always done landscapes as well.
Yeah.
But I really have always painted from life. I've taken periods where I do like abstract paintings as like I call it my hobby, or I'll paint still life or do figure. But the through line through my whole life, I've always just responded to painting from looking. And so for me, painting, I'm definitely identify more with the structure and geometry of buildings, but I also love to paint landscape because in a way it gives me a lot of freedom. And the last couple of years I haven't been going back over it. I just came to a place where I didn't want to work on paintings for a longer period of time, so I started just doing quick paintings, and I've been doing teeny tiny, teeny weeny. I was thinking my next show is going to be called Even Smaller. Smaller and smaller. But so I'm able to stay kind of fresh. The landscape is great for that, because if a tree is like 6 inches to the left or right, it doesn't matter so much. If a building, it's a little more constricted. So I kind of enjoy the freedom of painting the landscape, and obviously this is a spectacular landscape. It's so much fun to paint. It's killing me. It's almost killing me, but it is. It's just an amazing space. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does.